My name is Simon and this is how to build a racing car. This is a race report from the 5th round of the 2017 New South Wales Formula V State Championship at Sydney Motorsport Park on the Gardner Circuit once again. In the month prior to this round, we managed to get a fair bit done on the car to improve it for this round. The first major change was to the dampers. Prior to this round, the car had 2 Penske shocks from a Formula Ford on the rear and 2 Spax shocks from another Formula V on the front. I actually got 4 Penske shocks second hand when I bought the ones I was going to use on the rear, and I decided I was going to upgrade the front to use them. 2 things needed to happen though. First, I had to send all 4 shocks off to be rebuilt and tested such that they would be suitable for the car, which I did by sending them to North Terrace Tyres in South Australia. They got all 4 done and back to me between the last round and this one. The second thing I did was modify the front inboard shock mount. The Penske's are 50 mils longer than the Spax. I cut and drilled the parts required from mild steel plate. Then I took an angle grinder to my chassis to get rid of the old mounts. And finally I welded on the new mounts. Next up, I had additions that I wanted to make to the floor. At the front, I made a curved section which would fit beneath the main floor. This would better direct air beneath the car and would also retain the side bodywork. Until this point in the season, the bodywork just stopped beneath the car without anything to protect it, which left it quite vulnerable to damage. I cut these pieces from sheet aluminium and welded them together to form the addition. I then bolted all of that to the main floor from above. At the rear of the car, I finally installed an aluminium floor beneath the engine as well as the lower bodywork shrouds. I had intended to wait until I'd made some changes to the cooling of the engine, but decided to run the engine fully enclosed like this for a practice session to see how much hotter the car ran. When I found that the temperature only increased by about 5 degrees Celsius and was still well below its limits, I decided to leave it on for the round. Finally, we installed a replacement electronic ignition system into the engine. This was one of the recommendations I got from CGR Performance when they dynoed my engine. With the point system, the timing would waver around the target, while with the replacement it would sit perfectly steady. It would be a small improvement, but every little bit counts. On to the practice day then. I immediately found 2 things. The front shocks were much better. They gave the car a much more distinct corner entry, mid-corner and corner exit characteristic rather than before where the front sort of just felt soft. But while the damping was vastly improved, the shocks themselves were much stiffer than the Spax. Effectively, they acted as a spring, stiffening up the front end and throwing off the balance of the car. It took me until after the qualifying session and the first race to put 2 and 2 together and realise that I'd need to soften up the front end of the car by removing springs from the torsion spring to compensate. So in the end, I spent the 3 practice sessions on the Friday playing around with the setup without much success. The only other event worth noting on the Friday was an unfortunate crash between 2 cars as we did our outlap. One of them just ran wide coming onto the straight and span, which to be fair, I've done a couple of times to myself this year. Unfortunately for him, another car was following very close behind and had nowhere to go. He was launched into the air but luckily didn't flip. They were both lucky to escape without injury, but unfortunately both cars required repairs before Saturday. I was glad to see both were able to get going for qualifying, about the best possible outcome considering the circumstances. Another driver was not so fortunate when we did get to qualifying though. We weren't out for very long before I saw a red flag come out, which means that we have to slow down and return to the pits. We passed the unlucky driver, Thomas, who injured his ankle when he hit the wall coming towards the hairpin. He wasn't able to continue this round, but hopefully will recover and return when we get to Wakefield in a month. Qualifying recommenced, but we only had 2 laps after the delay. I kept it clean for most of the lap, but made a mistake coming into the last complex, going wide but not losing too much time overall. I placed 9th. I wasn't too pleased with myself for the mistake, but I knew that I could do better in the races. Race 1 had dramas before it even began. Matt pulled off with an oil leak while we were heading out to the grid. This left me with clear space in front for the start. I got off okay, and was with the front pack into turn 2, though I dropped back over the early part of the race. I just couldn't maintain that pace. I pushed hard though and gradually pulled back up to the pack. I was finally in a position to do something coming down the straight, making a move here to pull aside Aaron. I'm not sure if he didn't see me here, but we got pretty close heading into turn 1. I did try and move down the inside into turn 2, but didn't really have anywhere to go, falling back in line through 3. From here I dropped back from the pack, I just couldn't maintain their pace. I crossed the line in 7th. I made a change to the car after race 1. It occurred to me that I'd need to compensate for the stiffer dampers by softening the torsion spring. I came in early on Sunday morning to give myself time to take the front apart and remove the spring from the torsion pack. Race 2 was delayed after a car in the race prior to ours hit the wall on the outside of turn 1. The driver of this Manitou helpfully let me know what was going on.
Alright, thanks.
A huge train of support vehicles entered the track to assist the driver, pick up the car and repair the damaged wall. We jumped out of the cars while we waited. It gets pretty hot if you're just sitting around in the sun. We had to rush back into the cars when the support vehicles left the track. Getting belted in and ready isn't easy at the best of times in my car, but I think I set a new record for myself here. I was starting race 2 alongside Dylan after he had an accident in race 1, and it's worth watching his start. I got what I think is a decent start, but the way he launches off the line here shows me I've still got a lot to learn. I thought about heading around the outside of Aaron into turn 4, but the front washed away from me. My compromise line meant Matt was able to slingshot alongside and by me on the exit of turn 5. I managed to catch him on the straight and get past on the outside of turn 1, a place I held onto through 2 and 3. He stuck his nose to my right between turns 4 and 5, and we got pretty close to touching. We kept it together though. For me this was awesome. I was trying to keep Matt behind while also looking for ways to move forward. I thought about going inside of Dylan into the hairpin, but he defended by going right, so I moved left before we reached the braking zone. He must have had an issue this race with his brakes because he was locking up quite a bit. Ultimately here, he was in a better position and got ahead of me on the exit. While all this was going on, Matt was still behind me looking for a way by. He had a massive lock-up towards the final set of corners. I saw a big plume of smoke in my left mirror, but it was only when he described it to me after the race that I realised how close it was. We continued. Dylan had another big lock-up into turn 2, which put me alongside him. Yet again though, I was on the outside of turn 3 and didn't really have the speed to get ahead of him. I tried to get into the hairpin, but the outcome was the same as before. My next opportunity came as the pack headed into turn 2. Matt was on my inside in the braking zone, but I thought I'd just hold the outside so I'd be on the inside of turn 3. James went wide and coming back on the track put himself to my right. Suddenly I was being sandwiched and I had no choice but to back out of it. I wasn't going to give up the position so easily though and made a move into turn 2 on Matt. I'm kicking myself watching this because I was comfortably ahead of him on the exit. He was just in a bit of a blind spot of mine between what I could see in my right mirror and what I could see to my right, so I didn't move across to cover him off. I basically gave him an opening into turn 4 on a platter and he just took it. I didn't let it happen again though the next time around, going by and holding onto the position. My last opportunity of the race came when John passed Dylan into turn 4. I tried sneaking my nose in but wasn't able to get alongside. It would have been very optimistic in any case. And that was the end of race 2, probably the most exciting race I'd had to that point this year, even if I only started and finished in 7th. As you can probably tell, the car felt much better with the change that I made before the race. Not perfect, but an improvement. Race 3. Things started well enough. I was alongside John into turn 2 and thought I'd be able to stay inside in 3. Matt was alongside John though, and so we were 3 wide. Matt pushed John and John pushed me straight off into the dirt. It's becoming almost a ritual now for me to end up off the track there. I need to be able to position myself better, but I'm just not getting out of 2 fast enough to be able to assert myself, so I'm at the mercy of the other drivers. I got back onto the track okay, but Michael had the speed to get by me while I was off. This is not where I wanted to be. Michael is a damn good racer, but his car doesn't have the speed to keep up with the front pack. If I let myself get bogged down in a battle with him, that would probably be it for me. I was glad to be able to get by him on the straight and catch up to the front quite quickly. I was back in it and keen to try and make up for my earlier errors. I tried to move on Matt into the hairpin and we exited side by side, though he edged in front of me by the last series of corners. This wasn't too much of a problem for me though. I towed by him down the straight and then I was very happy to see that Michael got by him through turn 2. Matt would then have to get by Michael to be a threat to me again, and I knew from experience that Michael has no problem taking the fight to people in faster cars. I was looking to pass Aaron. He's very close to me in the championship, so it was a position that mattered. I had a great run into turn 2 but went a little bit wide, trying to carry a bit too much speed. Next time around though, I passed him on the straight and held it into turn 2. I had a twitch coming through 5 and he got alongside me again. Him pointing here is probably him trying to say to me that we should work together to stay with the front pack. Well, I didn't think that we needed to do this at this stage of the race, so I held on to the outside through turn 6 and stayed ahead. So he passed me down the straight, followed for good measure by Matt, who had managed to get past Michael. Bummer. I soon noticed that something was wrong with Matt's back wheel. It was wobbling really badly through turn 4, and it got a lot worse through turn 5. I was behind him thinking that his wheel was going to fall off, so I thought I should try and get out of his way after we exited, but he ended up pulling off before I had the chance. I was separated by all of this from the front pack, but was given an opportunity when Darren locked up into turn 2 and touched another driver. In my haste I had my own lock up, but still managed to get through. We came across the sad side of Matt, who had tried to get his stricken car back into the pits, only to lose the wobbly wheel, an unfortunate way for his weekend to end. I had the very fast and noseless Darren coming up behind me on the straight for the final time. There wasn't a whole lot I could do here. I was hoping missing the nose would hurt his aerodynamics and so he wouldn't be able to get by me, but it didn't turn out to be enough. It was another 7th place finish for me. And so that's another round done and dusted. It was a bit of a case of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, with improvements to the damping, air, and I think my driving. The car's balance took a hit though, and it took me far too long to realise what I needed to do with the front of the car to fix it. Overall, I'm very positive about it though. Getting in and amongst it with the front pack was a huge amount of fun. The data comparison to the previous round is quite interesting. You can see immediately that I'm more comfortable on the brakes and faster in the corners. Some of this, however, could be attributed to the oil, which affected almost every race of the last round. Also interesting is that I didn't seem to gain any top speed or acceleration from the rear bodywork. I'd hope to see some improvement, but it's just not there. I'll probably continue to run it though, as it doesn't affect the temperature, and I do think that the car looks a bit more complete with it on. As far as what can be done with the car to improve it, I think I'll spend more time playing around with the front spring pack at the next round. There is more time to be found there for sure. I'm getting to the stage though where I do feel that the engine is starting to let me down. It's now done quite a bit of work and in need of a top-end rebuild. There's also a different crank that can be used. Anecdotally, I've heard that it improves the punch out of corners at the expense of a bit of top-end speed. The way it was described to me by the current championship leader, he felt that his car was a lot more like mine before he installed it, slow out of corners but fast at the end of straights. This sounds exactly like what I'm experiencing. I have to nail corner exits to keep in touch with other people in front of me, but I fly up to them at the end of the straight into turn 2. The top end speed is enough that in the 2nd and 3rd races I was the fastest car in Sector 1, which includes the straight after the finish line. My thoughts are, however, I don't want to do these expensive changes at this late stage of the season. I won't dramatically improve in this year's championship no matter what happens. I'll leave the big engine work for now and only get it done before the next season that I compete in. Speaking of the championship, I've dropped 1 spot to 6th. Both John and Aaron moved past me, but Matt fell behind with his 2 non-finishes. The gap to Matt is quite large, so I could probably hold on to that spot with some consistent finishes. Moving forward may be possible, but I'd need some improvements to beat those ahead of me. There are only 2 more rounds left in the state championship, one at Wakefield Park in mid-August and one back here in mid-September. Between this round and the next, I'm hoping to make some small but important improvements to the car to get rid of some of the play and friction that exists in various systems within the car. It won't make the car much faster, but it will make it more pleasant to drive. Anyway, that's it for this round. I'll see you on the next one.